We all know that North Myrtle Beach is the place to be if you want to experience our state dance, shag. And we all know that before 1968, the name North Myrtle Beach didn't even exist. But here are some facts I bet you didn't know.
We would, like, say it was safe, and parents would let me stay out all night with these guys, and they would run lines out past the pier with surfboards and so forth. And the tiger sharks, they were probably in the 350 to 450 pound range, and the hammerheads too. Every once in a while, tarpon would hit, and of course we couldn't hook because they were using such large hooks and so forth, but they would pick up our bait and we'd see some jump. The biggest thing as a kid growing up, and this is going back probably 5, 6, 7 years old, was the spots runs. And that's a migrating fish that comes in the fall. We would just catch buckets at a time. And then as that time goes, that's how I kind of got involved with Pop Swain on the pier. Take times when he can have time off and run the tackle shop there and put his reels back together, little Zepco's 202s and so forth. Certain families would come down, and this was a family that had a vacation home right behind us with the Yarborough, which is actually the first cousin of the race car Kel Yarborough. And their son was my age, Court Yarborough, and I understand he's an attorney now in Florence. They taught us how to flounder fish by just putting a string white line down, a treble hook, and then catch a little whiting or a croaker or so forth overnight, and they'll come back in the mornings, and then you see this 4 or 5 pound flounders being hooked up and brought up. In the wintertime, blues and Spanish mackerel was the big one. Like I said, we basically stayed on the pier, and then from that point on fishing, then when you got in high school, Pop Swain lent me a 12-foot surfboard, and that's when guys started getting into surfing and so forth, and we worked on our longboards all the way down, little 5, 6 boards and 6-foot boards.
This was a community made up of race cars. And we had Speedway, a lot of businessmen, including my daddy, got together and up in the Little River area, and they built a stock car. It was a dirt track. And that was a big thing every Friday and Saturday night when we grew up around here. You had a Speedway in Loris, you had one in Conway, you had one in Dillon, and you had one in Little River. And a lot of people in this area, geographic area, Benjy Hardee was one of them, comes to mind, and Wendell Vereen, and there was several businessmen around this community owned race cars. My daddy owned a race car. Don Kelly was the driver of that race car. So I grew up every Friday and Saturday night going to those generally until I got older, going to those racetracks. Every Friday night we'd be either in Conway or they run on different nights, and then Little River was right there for us. So that was a big thing back then. They generally had like 2 or 3 classes of different classes of race cars, and you go there early evening on a Friday night before dark, usually, or just about dusk dark. And first stop would be a little hamburger stand called the Joy Hamburger. I think was the first hamburger place I remember around here, and same they had one in Loris. And you stop and get your hamburgers and your hot dogs, and you go to that racetrack, and you play in the infield with all your other friends that you knew there, and the night up until 11 or 12 o'clock at night, that's where you'd be every Friday night or Saturday night for me, and several other friends. Bill Bellamy's daddy owned a bunch of race cars, and he can comment on that too, because I grew up with Bill in the same community, and so I would see him at all the races, So that kind of activity was real prevalent in here for probably a better part of a decade or more, from the 60s, probably from sometime in the 60s to early 80s that went on. I can't remember the exact date when they quit with the racing around some of these tracks, but now, I remember seeing Dale Earnhardt's father run. I remember seeing Dale Earnhardt drive in Myrtle Beach when I was there, and some of their fathers and stuff, and some of the earlier NASCAR stars, that's how they started on these dirt tracks and around, and you would see these big names come in, and race from time to time on some of these dirt tracks. Certainly seeing some of those guys I just named, some of your bigger names, Buck Baker, and you know, the Petties, you know, you're seeing some of those come in for a special appearance, or maybe they're driving a special race they'd have, you know, those kinds of things to stand out. And generally just about your local people, you know, your Billy Hardees, your Wendell Vereen's, and people you grew up with, and the Don Kellys, you know, and when I was a little boy, you know, tagging along with them and watching them race those cars, it was an exciting time for me, you know.
In 1968, we opened Beechwood Golf Course, and I think probably people just didn't realize how great golf was going to be, but Dick had a dream that maybe he should diversify from real estate. So he got 15 stockholders together, and he opened Beechwood, and I think there's 8 stockholders left now, 8 or 9, and we're still a part of that. And then in 1972, we opened Eagle Nest with Roy Davis and his wife, Helen Davis. And we bought that out some years later, but for years I didn't play golf. I thought it was a golf game for the guys, and I didn't have time, and I was raising kids. And then when they got older, I thought this might be fun to learn. So we had an exchange student that was coming to us, and I met Gail Smith through Gail and her husband bringing us the exchange student, Lizette Broomer from South Africa. And so I said, would you like to start playing? So she said yes. And so I got Barbara Walker, and she got Norma Turner, and we are a golf foursome, and we play every Monday afternoon at 1:30. And now I know what the guys mean when they say, we've got a tee time. And it's there, and we are committed to being there. So it's been a great experience for us.
The charter boat business and the deep sea fishing is really big in this area. I've lived here all my life, and I've gotten seasick before on a surfboard because the water was so rough. But I've never been in the ocean on a boat but twice. And I went out with a captain out of Little River one year. It was probably, I don't know, maybe it was late 70s, early 80s after I was married and had children. And Captain Billy Long out of Little River. And he told me anytime I wanted to go, just call him, and I'd go. So I called him, and we went out to the Gulf. And I'll never forget it, because I love National Geographic, and I've seen the world through their magazine. Of course, I've been able to travel some too, but I've seen the world in National Geographic. And that day that I went out with Billy, we went 70 miles out to the Gulf, and the water turned from the murky green, yucky green, to just this beautiful emerald blue, deep, clear. I was just, and the water was so flat and smooth. Billy said, as a captain, he said he'd probably never been in the ocean any calmer than that day was. It was just flat, no ripples, just glassy. And I saw flying fish, never saw those before. And of course, I saw dolphins. And that day, to see the Gulf and see how clear the water was, that was just a great experience. And I got a little bit sick. I breathed the diesel fuel a little bit as we were circling around the fish, and it was kind of yucky, but it was okay. After that, I was okay. I ate something and drank a Coke or something, and then we fished the rest of the day. But it was a beautiful, just beautiful out there. I couldn't believe it.
Oh yeah, my father. We had this humongous grape arbor, muscadine grapes, in the backyard. I mean, it was bigger than this room, twice as big as this room. And he had a bunch of peach trees. Well, he used to make peach brandy, and he would make what would be called, I guess now, a fortified wine. He would take, he'd make the wine. I can remember he had big oak barrels, and we'd pick all the grapes. He would have them in there, they would ferment, and I can remember him, again, rolling up his pant legs, but a little bit higher this time, and he would get in there and he would mash the grapes, with his feet, just like they do back in Italy, I suppose, or everywhere else. And he would let it ferment. He kept a canvas cloth across the top, and whenever it got right, he could tell, I didn't know, he would cook off, the liquid until he got it you know, the proof to where he wanted. And what he would use to check the proof was an old hydrometer that you used to check. Remember, you used to check the car batteries, if the acid was good or not. Well, he would use a hydrometer to check the proof on the wine. But he would keep distilling it. You know, in other words, if he started out with 5 gallons, he might end with 2 gallons, but he'd get the proof twice as much. You know, usually I guess wine's 12 or 15%, but he would have it up like 40%. And everybody just loved my father's wine and the peach brandy. And I recall, after he died, everybody asked me, did you ever find any of your father's wine or peach brandy? Because I know he used to keep it under the house. I said, no, I've looked high and low. There's none to be found, but I do still have the still that he used and the hydrometer and the couple of other things that he used to make the wine and brandy. And I would help him as a kid. But I was sworn within an inch of my life never to tell anybody because it was against the law.
On Saturday morning, your dad would tell you we call our daddy Papa. Papa would tell us to go out and shell 2 bushels of corn, had to take it to the mill. He'd tell you, he says, I want 2 pecks or half a bushel or whatever of meal, the rest of it grits, like that, you know. Always she made her own soap, lye soap they call it. Get a big wash pot, put her ingredients in there, and then make the soap. And when it gets cold, they cut it out like a piece of cake, you know. Slip it out the wash pot. They had three tubs. When they get through boiling, they put the clothes in there. That's the way to clean them. And then she had a scrubbing board. She'd scrub them here. Then she'd rinse them off twice and then hang them up on the lines outside. We had her on meat. We'd kill it and hang it up. You think the smokehouse is going to burn down. The smoke coming out of everywhere. The smoke cured. Salt and smoke cured. Had her own meat. Yeah. Then once a week, the ice man would come by. You'd make your own, had a big box, make you an ice box, and you'd order 100, 150 pound of ice, and they'd leave it, put it in your box. You wouldn't have to be there. And they'd leave the money on the plate of the porch. He'd know where it was at. Then you didn't have to worry about your post stamps. I remember there was a 3 cent. You wouldn't have to worry about post stamps. Just put your letter in the mailbox, put your 3 cents on top of it, and the postmaster would put a stamp on it for you. They don't do that now.
So as you can see, we're hard at work documenting history for the future North Myrtle Beach Area Historical Museum. And here's one more fact. We need you. Come join us in our effort to preserve North Myrtle Beach area history.